Hello everyone, lovers of smell of paper and ink. I'm Gabriele Chiapparini, welcome to Small Photobook Cult. If you like our videos, please like them, leave comments everywhere and please subscribe to the channel. Do it. Today we will speak about 12 acres. Off camera, Henry told me he could identify the exact moments in his boyhood when he damaged his back. For instance, by not paying attention to things like choosing the right shoes for walking for hours. So, we all experience an age when our mind seems immune to common sense, where fear isn't so scary, where we form our bounds in the uncertainty of our future. Welcome to the episode 14 of Small Photobook Cult. We are here with the photographer Henry O'Head. Hello, Henry. I'm happy to speak about this book with you today.
Hey, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me on Small Photobook Club.
It's a pleasure. What?
Wait, we got to restart that one. You called it the wrong name.
No, it's okay. You know that the name originally was Club, and before it was Conspiracy. But some friends told me, yeah, conspiracy can be a tricky word right now. But it was Conspiracy because I think there is a political aspect in a lot of works. So Club was an option.
Cool. Well, thanks for having me.
So let's start from the title and the project. What is 12 Acres about?
Well, the book gets its title, 12 Acres, from a plot of family land that I grew up going to as a child in the Orzarks, which is, for those that aren't familiar, it's kind of a hilly, mountainous area in the middle of the U.S. I guess it was probably because my 30s were approaching and it felt like a new chapter of life was kind of moving towards me. I just began reflecting a lot on the place that I grew up. And I started thinking about the 12 acres of land that I used to visit when my family began making trips from Texas, where I was born, this piece of property. Before we moved to the area, we began making these annual trips, and I was just blown away by the landscape. There were really beautiful rivers and bluffs, and everywhere you looked, it was just kind of teeming with life and with possibility. So, that really unlocked my imagination as a child. That piece of land did. So when we ended up moving to the Ozarks, not to that plot of land, but to a place a couple hours away where my dad was working at a college as an English teacher. It felt like I had finally come home, moving from the suburbs in Texas to a part of the Ozarks that felt so familiar from my childhood. So that's kind of the geographic backdrop to both this work and to my life.
What did you find different in that place?
When I was still living in Texas as a kid, I was really fascinated with really just any animals that I could find around the house. I've always been really into catching critters, as we say here, and I would beg my dad to take me to the local golf course because there were little ponds of water there that I could go catch turtles and I could drop a line and catch fish. So I was looking for wild things in a domestic place. So when we came to the Ozarks, it was just real, wild land. So every direction you looked, there were things to find and to be curious about and amused by or threatened by, because there were also venomous snakes on the land, and occasionally bulls would get loose on the property. And I remember having to climb a tree as a child to seek safety so that I didn't get trampled. So I think that both the beauty and the danger of the wildness of the Ozarks is what really, just really captivated me. So that's kind of how I came to the Ozarks and fell in love with it. And then fast forward to my teenage years, I was a pretty insecure teenager in a lot of ways. I didn't share the same interest as some of the kids that I grew up going to school with sports and social life. I just much preferred to be outside And I also had a lot of kind of body dysmorphia at the time, probably from just getting bullied kind of relentlessly for a couple of years in my early teens. And so I had developed an eating disorder and was just having a hard time. I was just having a hard time, as we all do when we're teenagers, in various ways. So I continued to kind of retreat into the countryside close to where my family lived. And I remember spending like an entire summer just pretty much by myself. I didn't really have any friends at this point. And there was a little creek that was on my family's land. And I would just get up, eat breakfast. For an entire summer, I would just walk down to this creek, put a canoe in the water, and just take off. And I'd usually have my iPod with me, and I would be listening to music that I would pirate off LimeWire. Yeah, I just had a lot of time to be with myself in this beautiful place, and it made a lot of the feelings that I was carrying at the time that were pretty hard to feel. They all kind of subsided when I was outside, and I really began to feel like I was a part of the kind of ecosystem around me. So my love for the outdoors has like always been there. But then my junior year of high school, when I was probably 16, I met this boy named Roger in one of my classes, and we just kind of hit it off. He just had this like really killer sense of humor and was kind of a troublemaker, which I liked. And we just began hanging out outside of school. And he had kind of a chaotic home life in a lot of ways. So he was looking for an excuse to be outside of the house. And I already enjoyed being outdoors so much that the places that I had grown to love, I began taking Roger to those places. And yeah, we just kind of became inseparable for a season. So we were always looking for an escape in more ways than one. I mean, we were looking to escape into the beauty of the Ozarks. I mean, there was like a natural affinity for the landscape, for climbing trees, swimming, just putting our bodies up against nature and enjoying that experience. But we were also just trying to escape through, getting drunk and high and experimenting a lot with substances at the time. And I don't know, I think we were just pushing back on the kind of social landscape of the Midwest where we were living at the time. The town that we were living in is called Branson, Missouri. It's kind of like Las Vegas for old people and families. And there's certainly like a prominent conservative fundamentalist Christian ideology that kind of permeates throughout the whole space. And that means that you're expected to fall into line in how you act and how you dress and what you're supposed to think. And I think that we were also trying to liberate ourselves from those pressures to be able to think for ourselves and to have our own experiences.
So kind of outsiders.
We're definitely outsiders for sure. Yeah, we were troublemakers for sure as well. But we didn't have like the wherewithal or the tools to show our affection for each other through what we said. Like there wasn't a lot of vocalizing how much the other person meant. It was just understood through the time that we would spend together how important we were to one another. So it was interesting, over a decade later, beginning to make this work where I'm thinking back to that friendship and that time of life, and I'm wondering like, well, how do you express, that kind of male intimacy photographically? And that was like an interesting way for me to reflect on my own relationship to both the past, but also to masculinity as well, and how I might be able to subvert the kind of standard ways of thinking about being a man in the place that I'm from. So that was also kind of an important way for me to explore myself, I guess.
This reminds me a bit a documentary I saw some years ago in a festival. The title is All the Sleepless Nights. The director is Michal Marczak. It's amazing. It's really beautiful. It's a documentary about that moment in your life when you really like to stay up all night and go to parties and stuff. And he found these two friends, and he started follow these two friends in that night. And I think there is something similar to like in your work. It's just a different medium, and of course also maybe a different topic. But
yeah.
So what happened with these two guys?
Yeah, in my late 20s, right as I was approaching 30, as I begun reflecting more on the 12 acres, the place that I was from, around the same time I had been hanging out with a few just younger guys from my community here in Northwest Arkansas. And there was one day we were all going to the river, and there was a younger guy in the group that I had never met before who was really soft-spoken and friendly and just great to be around. And his name was Elijah. And we went to the river that day, and we all jumped in, and afterwards, when we were drying off, I was just having a conversation with Elijah, and I asked him if he would be open to me making a portrait of him. So I always keep my camera with me when I'm doing things around town. So we took a couple photos that day down by the river, and then maybe a week later, I met his older brother, Leroy, at a party in town, and we just instantly connected as well. And so I think it was right after meeting the older brother that we all got together and made some photos. And then, soon after that, there was a filmmaker from Northwest Arkansas who was kind of exploring his own past with this film he was making called Mud Puppy. And the project, it's kind of like a time traveling, like it's got like a little bit of Western elements to it, a little bit of fantasy in it as well. It's a really cool project. He hit me up to see if I wanted to take some photos alongside his short film, and I told him like I would love to, and that I was already working with these younger brothers, and I recommended that we use the brothers in the short film. During the few days of filming, I began, I went out and location scouted with Cole, the filmmaker, and he began making a short film. And while he was filming, I would just kind of hang out during the same hours. And then when there were breaks in the filming, I would pull the brothers and kind of just reimagine my own little moments, and was using my own experience of my friendship with Roger as a teenager to kind of reimagine the past. And that was what really got me interested in using these boys as kind of avatars for my younger self and for that friendship. And after the few days of filming, I knew that there was more I wanted to explore. So I ended up spending the next year working with these brothers. And there's another young guy named Matthew who appears in some of the photos as well. It was pretty simple. We would just, I would just take the boys with me to a lot of the same places I used to go when I was a teenager. Most of these places are places that I hadn't been to since I was, their age. Occasionally I would direct the boys to do something specific if I wanted to try and, recreate a particular memory. But most of the time we were just hanging out together, and I would just kind of wait around to see what they wanted to do. And occasionally there were things that they did just of their own volition that were interesting to me. And I would, those are moments that I would begin photographing. Yeah, so that's kind of how the work started and gave it the momentum to become this body of work.
But probably there is something about that particular time in life when you have that kind of phase, and you starting to experience freedom. Like, what is it? What is it, and what is that we lose when the time starts passing and we aging?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, after that season of life, being young and having the ability to be free, I mean, you can only have that kind of freedom for so long, obviously, before all of the pressures and expectations of, becoming a person in the modern world begin to press in on you. So you lose, of course, like in a lot of ways, your body, because I know for myself, have back and neck pain all the time now. And when I was younger, I felt like I was, indestructible. And so you lose. I think one of the biggest things that you lose is really just imagination. You lose the willingness to see a world other than the world that's marketed and kind of forced upon you. And the reclaiming of imagination, I think, is of course like the work of the artist in a lot of ways, but it's also just the work of maintaining hope. So those are things that I guess we could lose and we have to fight for. But we also, it's not just loss, because to have all of these, coming of age experiences, they also give you something to carry with you. They give you reference points for when life was a certain way, and occasionally a place to return to for comfort. I mean, that's been the case for me with making this work anyways, it gives me a chance to momentarily reclaim something that had otherwise been forgotten.
Is there in the Ozarks a kind of lack of institutions or not?
I mean, there's institutions, there's towns and cities around the area, but a lot of them are, I mean, I don't want to paint with too broad of a brush, because there's of course like great things going on everywhere if you look for them. But when we were a teenager, it was easy to just focus on the institutions I was kind of mentioning earlier that had a political or religious affiliation that we weren't really interested in participating in. I mean, it was a very strange demographic of even who attended our public high school, because Branson, the town I'm from, it's like a little entertainment hub where there's shows and performers, where there's a lot of, the kids whose parents are working in these theaters have a ton of money and they pull up to school in their sports car. But the majority of the kids from the school have come from families who have to work the concessions and the janitorial positions and work as room cleaners. And there's kind of a strange class divide in Branson. And then, of course, there's the large religious community that kind of flocks together. And Roger and I, we just didn't really find ourselves connecting with some of the groups that had formed in the place that we lived. And we weren't interested in, I guess, participating in the institutions just yet. We were trying to ward off the inevitable with our time together.
You can see in this book, I don't know, stuff exploding. And I thought probably, of course, it's not something that I can do in my city.
Right.
Because it's not going to work. But also stuff like this one on the left, I don't know, climbing on a bridge. It's not happening in a city, because in probably 5 minutes, someone is coming, like the police is coming and say, you cannot do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think that there's there is kind of a certain privacy that you have in the Ozarks, where it's there's a lot of land that's you can either have access to legally, or you could do what we were doing most of the time, which was trespassing, with a low chance of ever being, caught. So yeah, like those bridge photos that appear in the beginning, as well as a lot of these other backdrops, are vestiges of a time where the Ozarks maybe still had more of an active, agricultural life. I mean, it's very common to drive around the Ozarks and to see abandoned barns, because people that have inherited these plots of land are no longer using them agriculturally. So there's a lot of things left behind.
So yeah, of course, stuff like that. Not just exploding, like real exploding. Like it's a proper explosion. I never saw. I saw something like that, to be honest. a bit different, but in a place where, of course, there is no police and.
Yeah. Well, that photograph is definitely one that is inspired by a very specific memory of when I was a teenager, where my friends and I realized that you could make these really fantastic homemade bombs with a 50-gallon plastic trash can. That we'd buy a trash can, and then you fill it halfway up with lighter fluid, which is obviously flammable, and then you get mortar firework, the fireworks that are like the big balls that you drop in the tube, and they have the long wick that you light, and they're dramatic. So we would, you just close the trash can lid on the wick so that the mortar is hanging above the lighter fluid, and then you light it and run, and it's a huge explosion. And we did a couple of those in the middle of downtown Branson, the place that we were both from. And they were so loud, they set off all of the alarms for the local apartments. And we fled the scene, and 10 minutes later, there were just cops everywhere. And it ended up being in the local paper. No one knew what it was, but they thought it might have been a bomb threat. So yeah, we used to do stuff like this all the time. And then while I was making this work with the boys, I was spending some time at my sister and brother-in-law's land, who live way out in the country in a small town called Huntsville, Arkansas. And my brother-in-law mentioned that he had been doing these bonfires out at the house, and that he would start the bonfire with an explosion using his own methods. He was using tannerite, and which is an explosive material that they use for shooting here. You can set it up as a target and shoot it. Anyways, once he told me he was going to be doing something that had an explosion, I asked him if I could bring the boys that I had been working with out to the land to come see it, and that's how this photo ended up happening, which was actually a pretty hard photo to take. It's very hard to look through the viewfinder of a camera and to actually be watching when the explosion's happening, because it's so loud and has such a big blast that it kind of pushes you back a little bit. So I was glad that it came out okay.
Yeah, it's true. It's a super hard pictures to take. So I can presume that it's 35 or medium format, this one.
Yeah, that one is taken on medium format. Yeah, on a Mamiya 7.
Yeah, well, we're going to speak about that, because I knew you used a lot of different format and cameras. Later, we will reach that point. I want to ask you, what is the role of risk and danger in general in this work? What does it mean to you? And was it already present in the life of these two brothers, or you put it inside the let's say, a fictional part?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. A little bit of both. I think the brothers that are in the work are, they have their own ways of rebelling that are not always safe. But risk and danger were certainly very present throughout my teenage life as well. And I think in a lot of ways it was using having moments with danger, moments of high impact, where I was blowing something up or jumping from something really high, just taking a big chance and seeing what would happen, were kind of moments of catharsis in certain ways. Like if you have a lot of pent up feelings inside of you that you're carrying around, and then you blow some shit up, it's just a way to have a momentary, kind of energetic release or something. I don't know. So yeah, I think that whenever we're out in these locations and the boys end up wanting to climb something or jump off something, it doesn't really take a ton of convincing, because they like the thrill seeking too. So.
But you also put yourself in a quite risky position. I don't know. Maybe you were you was in a safe spot here, but it doesn't look like.
No, it definitely was not a safe place. Climbing up that bridge with the camera bag on was a first. But it's also something I've grown up doing, and I enjoy kind of tapping back into that kind of monkeying around that I was doing a lot when I was younger. So that opening sequence at the bridge, I think, was kind of, this kind of establishing moment where it feels like it's in the dead of summer, and it kind of sets the work up to move through the seasons, through fall and winter, and at the very end back into spring. But also, as I kind of get into talking about these photographs, not all of the things I'm saying now are things that were really conscious or present at the time of making the work. It's a lot of it's just it's just meanings that have come to me since the works come together. But at this point, it does feel a little bit like this opening sequence with the boys kind of at these different perspectives on the same steel bridge. It almost feels like you're getting to jump body to body, seeing from the perspectives of different boys. 1 minute you're looking down and the next minute you're looking up.
Yeah, and also...
And then...
No, go on. Sorry.
I don't know. We can talk a little bit more about the bridge, but I just had a comment I was going to make about the following photo of the boys embracing. But what were you going to say?
That you decide to create this kind of intro for the book. That it's quite curious because you start with these pictures that it look like an establishing landscape. Then there is this small text.
Yeah.
And then you start to go inside this book quite fast, because you start with something really strong that is this one, then this one.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have like in a movie, like Palm publisher presenting. It's really cinematic. And what happened during the editing and the sequencing? How you decide to put this part a bit out of the book?
These are good questions. I'm still making sense of it all today. But we did feel like that opening scene where you're kind of looking through a little window in the trees. Something about that first shot, at least for me, feels a little bit like looking, because you're looking through something in that first shot, Gabriela, with the trees. It reminds me a little bit of looking back, which is, of course, like a theme throughout all of this work. So it also personally feels like a moment. It feels so much like my childhood when I see it, like my first impression, where there's the little stream and the fields and trees. And so we wanted to kind of just establish the place here. And then for that first sequence of photos on the bridge, we didn't want to rush too quickly into any kind of narrative. We just wanted to almost invite the viewer to just settle in a little bit during a single day spent at a location. So that's kind of how we were thinking about pacing it. It's just inviting the viewer to be in the place for a little bit before kind of moving around the terrain and seeing more of the friendship and the moment.
Yeah, is it also a bit like entering a place because you have this kind of door here?
Yeah, certainly. Absolutely. And that was that photograph, that first one is kind of a fun one to look back on, because I had gotten caught trespassing on that land. And while I was trespassing, the guy who caught me, I'm friends with now. His name's Andrew, and I explained myself when I came up out of the bushes holding my camera that I just loved his land and wanted to see it a little bit. And he was flattered that I liked the land and offered to show me more of the property. So since then, I've returned to that land multiple times. And at one point, I even came out and took some family photos of the couple, and they paid me with cartons of eggs from their farm. So,
wow.
Anyways, that's a nice little. I like that photograph has that personal connection to the people that I met through it as well. But yeah, so there's that establishing shot, and then moving into the bridge. It's just a day at the river. This is one of my favorite bridge spots in Northwest Arkansas. It's an old steel bridge that I think was being built for a railroad that never got finished. like half the bridge is like collapsed into the water. So it's just half of a steel bridge that juts out of these cliffs, and there's a skate park nearby. So every year my friends and I that skate will go skate at the skate park. And once you're all done, you go to the bridge and jump in to cool off. So yeah, it's a bridge that means a lot to me and to my community.
Yeah, it's a really powerful start for this book. Henry, because we are speaking about the sequencing, so we can finish this topic if you want. Then you have the central part of the book. But also in the end, you put a kind of small trick, because you decide to almost close the book here with this other text. Then there is this one that seems to be the last picture. Then, there is the text. We can speak about it later. Then there is this part. And yeah, the book is finished. But then you have this one still, that is the very last picture in the book, that I think it's really strong and really amazing. Why you decide to put it here, outside the work?
So originally, and I love this photograph as well, it had originally gone on the chopping block whenever we were doing the sequence the first time, just because we couldn't find a natural place to put it in the sequence. And we already had the moment with the explosion, and we weren't really I didn't want to repeat certain moments too much. I wanted for most of the moments to kind of, I don't know, be their own. But then when I did the edit with Brian and Brian Skutmat, when we sent the edit to Kevin at Twin Palms, he was like, "Oh man, we have to find a place to work this in." And so he was the one who actually recommended putting it after the colophon as just like a final moment with the boys. And I'm so glad that we did. And I also think it works really nicely, bringing the viewer back into this world, since, and we can talk more about this in a little bit, but the essay that appears at the end of the book, which is written from a female perspective on growing up in the Ozarks, it's nice having a moment where you can suspend what you've seen visually with the boys, and you can take in this other voice to accompany the photos. It's nice to have this like kind of tie-in where you get to be with the boys one more time, so that it all kind of, fits together.
What about the text? You said that I thought it's super intriguing, the fact that it's from the perspective of a girl. It's really fascinating. How came up this idea to take that text?
Oh, yeah. Well, the writer of that essay, her name's Alyssa Morrison, and she and her husband Jason, they're two very, very close friends of mine, and they're also heroes of mine. They're absolutely brilliant writers and thinkers, and I think they probably have done just as much for my photography as the photographers that I admire, because they're the way that they've given themselves so fully to their writing practices is inspiring in itself. But it's also, I guess I'll speak specifically to Alyssa. She writes in a way that's that moves seamlessly from something poetic to something that's very material and very clear. Moments of, I don't know, she just brings together a lot of kind of contradiction within her writing, with its bluntness and its beauty. And she was a close part of making this work. As I would get film back, I would share it with her and her husband, and we would talk about it. And also, it's very common when I'm spending time with Alyssa and her husband, where we'll just get together and just drink the house dry, and they'll just read poems to me that they're inspired by or that they're writing. And it puts all kinds of images in my head that just bleed into how I'm looking at the world. So when I got like about halfway through the project, I began kind of daydreaming about working with Alyssa on something. And yeah, I asked her if she would be interested in including a piece. And she had originally written a a poem that was going to appear in the work. But the poetry was great, but it just felt like it was too much about the photographs. And I just invited her to just explore her own experiences and just to let it rip, just whatever she wanted to write about, just to go for it. And so she put together this brilliant essay of her experience growing up in the same neck of the woods as me. And I feel like it just really complemented the work nicely. And also some of the details that she includes about, some of the pop culture references about the music or the films, some of her kind of critical perspective towards the ideological and social world that's on the last page of her essay. It just does a good job painting like a wider picture of the time in which the work was alluding to. So, I also, of course, agree with what you said, that having this strong feminine voice at the end of, all of these photos of boys is just kind of a nice break where you get to widen the world a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of that few cases where the text really became part of the project 100%. It's the text really complete the job.
Yeah, I agree. And I also wanted to make sure that if I included writing, I know that there's a lot of debate about this in the Photobook world, but I just, for my work, I wasn't as interested in including writing that explained what I was doing in the photographs directly. I want people to bring as much of their own imagination to the work as possible. And so I think that having a work like this that exists alongside the photographs is it didn't do any of the explaining, and I appreciated that as well.
Yeah, I agree. So a technical question. How did you choose the cameras?
Well, when I started the work, I was actually working in both in black and white and in color for the first maybe 5 or 6 rolls I shot. I wasn't quite sure about, how I wanted to explore this topic and this theme. And just immediately upon getting the first scans back, I just felt like the shooting black and white draws so much more attention to the quality of light in the photographs than the color film. And I think for me that the light that I was working in most of the time was pretty important for me to recapture the time in which I was, investigating. So that was the decision for the black and white. As for the cameras I was using, I didn't want to put too many limitations on the work. I also would just run out of certain film at some points. Like if I didn't have any more medium format rolls in the fridge and I still had 35 and I wanted to get out with the boys and go someplace new, I would just kind of do it out of necessity. But there are also photos that I think really benefited from the handheld feeling, like the one on the left here with the boy throwing the ear of corn back into the field. I think it just worked better having that little bit of shake and that from the waist feeling of the smaller negative and the smaller camera. Whereas the photos, like the one to the right of it, that are a little bit more detailed, it made sense to have the larger negative. So I would just kind of adapt the camera to the environment that I was wanting to work in or the scene that I was wanting to portray. And then for continuity's sake, I just made sure everything was cropped to the same 4x5 for the edit sequence, so that formally it would all work together.
How did you blend the different cameras? And I want to ask you if you were intimidated by using these different cameras.
There are certainly parts of the project that I found intimidating, but choosing which cameras to use, intimidation wasn't really something I ever felt with that. I was kind of enjoying the playfulness of trying out different scenes with different cameras and then seeing, once I scanned everything in, what worked the best. So I was just using the cameras that I currently own, which I have a a Nikon F3 for my 35, a Mamiya 7 for my medium format, and then a Chamonix 4x5 camera that I used for a handful of the photos in the book as well. And oftentimes I would just pack everything I had into the backseat of my car and head out with the boys. And it was completely out of a sense of intuition what cameras I would use when. I didn't have, like a lot of my thinking through the making of this work was less like focused and analytical and was more, kind of just off feeling. So.
And did you work a lot in post-production for like equalize the contrast and the other aspects?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, as I was getting the film back and was doing some like kind of touch-ups on things, I mean, I wasn't doing anything too dramatic to the edits, but once we began, once I needed to prepare the files for printing, especially since we were using tritone printing on uncoated paper, I realized that, I was going to have to do some experimenting with the post-processing to make sure that the photos looked on paper how they were, intended to look. And a lot of that was trial and error for me, because I don't have a ton of experience printing right now. So I just bit the bullet and I got the entire batch of negatives drum scanned. And then I have a friend who lives down the road from me who's an older photographer who has a little printing studio at his house. He's got like a nice Canon printer. And I just ordered a few different papers in and began stopping by once a week to do some test prints. And that did require me to do a little bit more in post, but I tried not to get, too crazy with it. I wanted the photos to look on paper as close as I could get them to, feeling like how they were as a digital file, as like a fresh scan.
Yeah, and I really love this fact that you can feel these different cameras. It adds a lot to this project. I think you have more like quiet moments and also intimate moments. Then you have stuff like this one that it's completely in another direction, but they work super well together. And I have to say that the printing aspect of the book, it's really, 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 it's really good. But it's something that I think it's quite used to see with publisher like Twin Palms. Also, the other books that I have are really, really beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, they did. It was great working with Twin Palms, and it was nice having someone like Kevin at Twin Palms, who has obviously so much experience, to kind of give recommendations throughout on helping me. Like I could kind of communicate to him what I was imagining for the work to look like, and I had all these fantastic recommendations for how to achieve it. So the whole process of the book making itself, though, through Kevin at Twin Palms and through Brian and Matthew Genetempo at Trespasser, I just had really great advice the whole every step of the way, which is huge.
Yeah, it's a great help. And Henry, what do you think if I can maybe ask you a last question, then we can close this part of the episode, because I still have a lot of things to ask you, but probably in a second part. Is it okay?
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I want to know, like you have traveled a lot in your life. Mm-hmm. I know it because I saw I'm super bad with English names. So he released like a short, not so short, like 20 minutes episode about this book with you. And I learned a lot about you watching that episode, and I suggest you that are watching this episode to search for it. It's really good. And I know you traveled a lot in your life, and I want to ask how much has that influenced you, and how evident is this in this part of you in this work?
So this work, it's depicting an age of my life, probably around like age 16 to 18, those like later teenage years before my friend Roger and I both went to separate colleges. And college just really wasn't for me. I only made it a year before I dropped out. I felt like I didn't have enough experience to know what to commit 4 years of learning to. And so I ended up back in my hometown, just kind of uncertain of what was next. I really wanted to travel, but it feels out of reach in the town that I'm from. Not a lot of people go out and do that. So I was just working a job in my hometown when I met this traveler named Michael Portugal, who was passing through the area, and he had been living out of a backpack and hitchhiking for over a year whenever I met him and got to hear his story. And we just quickly formed this friendship that that had a really immediate bond, and he invited me to hit the road with him, and I said yes, and I didn't really look back. We spent the next 6 months hitchhiking around the west coast of the US and then Mexico, and then I continued my travels to Australia and New Zealand and was just traveling completely broke. I would just work enough to get a plane ticket somewhere and then would sleep outside and dumpster dive and hitchhike, and eventually did a little train hopping as well, and felt very at home in that way of living. And all of the experiences I had on the road and the people I met certainly changed me in profound ways. I mean, there's like I mentioned earlier, in the Midwest, in the Bible Belt, I don't have as much proximity to people of different colors or genders or beliefs. It is all, it can be fairly homogenous. So getting to meet so many different kinds of people and to experience so much life and generosity, it really opened me up as a person. And then, throughout my 20s, I continued a lot of my travels. So getting to 30 was the first time in almost a decade I had really stopped and decided to turn around and wait for the past to catch up. And when it did, I just, I realized there were all kinds of beautiful and painful and confusing feelings from my teenage years that I had never really thought about. I was so preoccupied with what was coming next that I hadn't really processed, that friendship and that season of life. And also, I for a long time had fallen out of touch with the friendship that inspired this work. And over the last couple of years of making it, it's kind of been a chance for me to tap back into all of the affection I feel towards this person. And he and I have kind of reconnected through the making of the work as well. So I do think this is one of those scenarios where you kind of need distance from what you're close to for a while to be able to come back to it with a fresh perspective. And I think that the amount of time away from the season of life presented in this work that I took, it really helped my return to it. It helped me. I had so many new ways of investigating, and I had different lenses to kind of filter what I wanted to explore with these photographs, whether that be just, friendship or memory or loss or boredom or identity, home, all of these things that are so personal. I was kind of working out through the collaboration with these boys. That's probably how it.
Yeah, it's super interesting. Really fascinating. So, Henry, we stop here, and
Okay.
It was super interesting for now. I think we can start the next one, maybe speaking about some specific pictures if you want.
Sure, yeah.
So everybody that if you are like watching this, let's meet us in the next episode, speaking about some specific pictures with Henry Hohead. And thank you so much for now. Bye-bye.
Bye, too.